Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Wait 3 seconds. I should have known something was wrong with Dr. Marcus Thorne the night I found him in the morgue at 3 in the morning, standing over Mrs. Chen's body with his hands buried deep in her chest cavity. But hindsight is a luxury I can no longer afford. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've been a night shift nurse at St. Mary's General Hospital for 8 years. I thought I'd seen everything: overdoses, car accidents, domestic violence cases that made my stomach turn. But nothing prepared me for what I discovered about the man I'd worked alongside for 3 years, the man I'd trusted with my patients' lives. It started with small things: patients who should have recovered taking unexpected turns for the worse. Families asking questions about their loved ones' final moments that I couldn't answer. But in a hospital, death is as common as the fluorescent lights that never stop humming, so nobody questioned the patterns, nobody except me. The first real sign came on a Tuesday night in October. I was making my rounds when I heard voices coming from room 314. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman recovering from hip surgery, was supposed to be asleep. Her medication chart showed Dr. Thorne had administered a sedative 2 hours earlier. I pushed the door open quietly and froze. Mrs. Patterson was sitting upright in bed, her eyes wide with terror, but she wasn't making a sound. Dr. Thorne stood beside her, his hand pressed against her forehead, whispering something I couldn't understand. The words seemed to slither through the air like smoke, and the temperature in the room felt 10 degrees colder than the hallway. "Doctor," I called softly. He spun around, and for just a moment his eyes reflected the dim light like an animal's. Then he smiled his usual warm smile, the one that had charmed patients and staff alike for years. "Sarah, you startled me. Mrs. Patterson was having trouble sleeping, so I was just checking on her." I looked at the patient. She was lying down now, eyes closed, breathing steadily. But I could have sworn I saw tears glistening on her cheeks. "Is everything all right?" I asked, stepping closer. "Of course, just some post-surgical anxiety, perfectly normal." He moved past me toward the door, but paused. "Sarah, you look tired. Perhaps you should take your break early tonight." It wasn't a suggestion. Over the following weeks, I started paying closer attention to Dr. Thorne's patients. The mortality rate on his cases was higher than average, but not enough to raise official suspicions. What bothered me more were the survivors. They left the hospital changed, hollow-eyed, speaking in whispers about dreams they couldn't remember but couldn't forget. I began keeping notes, documenting times and dates, patient reactions, anything that seemed unusual. The patterns that emerged made my blood run cold. Dr. Thorne seemed drawn to certain types of patients: the elderly, the terminally ill, those with no family to ask difficult questions. And he always worked the night shift when oversight was minimal and the hospital felt like a different world entirely. The breakthrough came when I decided to review security footage. As head night nurse, I had access to the surveillance system, though I'd never used it for anything like this before. What I found in the digital archives made me question my own sanity. The cameras showed Dr. Thorne entering patient rooms at all hours, often staying for extended periods. But the strangest part was how the footage sometimes seemed to distort around him. Shadows moved independently of their sources. The timestamp would occasionally skip or blur. And in several instances, the cameras captured something that shouldn't have been possible: Dr. Thorne appearing to be in two places at once. I was studying one particularly disturbing clip when I felt a presence behind me. I turned to find Dr. Thorne standing in the doorway of the security office, his face expressionless. "Working late again, Sarah." My heart hammered against my ribs, "just catching up on some paperwork." He stepped into the room, and I noticed how the fluorescent light above us began to flicker. "You know, curiosity can be a dangerous thing in a place like this. Hospitals are full of secrets, some better left undisturbed." I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I'm just doing my job, doctor." "Of course you are." He moved closer, and I caught a scent that reminded me of old books and something else, something organic and unpleasant. "But perhaps it's time you considered a transfer. Day shift might suit you better. I like working nights." His smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes. "Do you? Even with all the strange dreams you've been having lately?" I hadn't told anyone about the dreams. They'd started a few weeks ago, vivid nightmares about walking through endless hospital corridors, hearing voices calling for help from rooms that didn't exist. How could he possibly know? "I don't know what you mean," I lied. "Don't you?" He leaned against the desk, close enough that I could see my reflection in his pupils. "Room 237 last night. You were sleepwalking again, weren't you?" Standing outside the door, listening to something that wasn't quite there, the memory hit me like a physical blow. I had dreamed about room 237, but it was just that, a dream, wasn't it? "The mind plays tricks when we're overtired," Dr. Thorne continued. Sometimes we see things that aren't real, sometimes we remember things that never happened, and sometimes, Sarah, we discover things we wish we hadn't. He straightened up and headed for the door, but paused at the threshold. Get some rest, you look pale. After he left, I sat in the security office for another hour, my hands shaking as I tried to process what had just happened. The rational part of my mind insisted there had to be a logical explanation, but deep down, I knew I was dealing with something far beyond normal human understanding. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to follow Dr. Thorne and document whatever he was really doing to his patients. I armed myself with a small digital camera and waited. At 2:47 a.m., I watched him enter room 318, where Mr. Kowalski lay dying of pancreatic cancer. The man's family had said their goodbyes earlier that evening, and he wasn't expected to survive the night. I gave Dr. Thorne 5 minutes, then crept down the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and what I saw through the gap made my knees buckle. Dr. Thorne stood beside the bed, his hands hovering over Mr. Kowalski's chest. But his hands weren't just hands anymore. They seemed to stretch and distort, becoming something darker, more fluid. And from Mr. Kowalski's body, thin streams of what looked like silver mist were rising up, being drawn into Dr. Thorne's palms. The dying man's eyes were open, staring at the ceiling with an expression of absolute terror. His mouth moved as if he were trying to scream, but no sound emerged. The silver mist grew thicker, and as it did, Mr. Kowalski's face began to age rapidly, skin wrinkling, hair whitening, eyes sinking deeper into their sockets. I raised the camera with trembling hands and pressed record. Through the viewfinder, I watched Dr. Thorne's transformation continue. His appearance flickered between human and something else, something ancient and hungry. The silver mist swirled around him like a living thing, and I could swear I heard voices within it, crying out in languages I didn't recognize. Then Dr. Thorne turned toward the door, and his eyes met mine through the camera lens. The device went dead in my hands, the hallway lights began to strobe, and a sound like breaking glass filled the air. I ran. I made it to the stairwell before the nausea hit. I collapsed against the concrete wall, vomiting until there was nothing left, my body shaking uncontrollably. When I finally looked up, Dr. Thorne was standing 3 steps above me. I warned you, Sarah. His voice had changed. It carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce, echoes that seemed to come from somewhere far away. When he smiled, I saw that his teeth were too sharp, too numerous. What are you? I whispered. I'm a doctor, he replied. I help people transition from one state of being to another. I ease their suffering and take what they no longer need. You're killing them. Am I, or am I simply harvesting what would otherwise be wasted? Do you know what happens to a soul when the body dies, Sarah? It dissipates, becomes nothing. I give it purpose. I preserve it. He descended the steps slowly, and with each footfall the temperature dropped. My breath began to mist in the air. Those people trusted you, I said, and I helped them. Their pain is gone. Their fear has ended. What I take from them allows me to continue my work to help others in need. It's a fair exchange. The families will mourn and move on as families do, but the essence of their loved ones lives on within me, becomes part of something greater. Isn't that a form of immortality? I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't support me. Dr. Thorne crouched down until we were at eye level, and I could see myself reflected dozens of times in his pupils, as if his eyes contained infinite depth. You've seen too much, Sarah, but I don't want to hurt you. You're a good nurse, dedicated to your patients. We could work together. Never. Think about it. How many people have you watched die in unnecessary pain? How many families have you comforted while knowing their loved one's suffering could have been ended hours earlier? I can teach you to ease that burden, to take away the pain and put it to good use. As he spoke, images flashed through my mind, memories of patients I'd watched suffer, families I'd seen destroyed by grief. But mixed with my own memories were others that didn't belong to me. I saw Dr. Thorne in different hospitals, different decades, always the same but wearing different faces. I saw him standing over countless bodies, drawing out that silver mist, growing stronger with each soul consumed. Stop, I gasped, pressing my hands to my temples. The knowledge hurts at first, he said gently, but you'll adapt. Humans are remarkably resilient creatures. I won't let you continue. His expression hardened. You don't have a choice. He reached out and touched my forehead, and the world exploded into fragments of light and shadow. I was falling through memories that weren't mine, experiencing deaths that spanned centuries. I felt the terror of Dr. Thorne's victims, their desperate attempts to cling to life as he drained away their essence. But I also felt his hunger, ancient and insatiable, and his twisted justification for what he did. When the visions ended, I was lying on the floor of the stairwell, alone. My watch showed 6:23 a.m., almost time for the day's shift to arrive. I struggled to my feet and made my way back to the nurse's station, my mind reeling. The camera was gone, but I still had my notes. I could report what I'd seen, tell someone in authority, but who would believe me, and what proof did I have? Over the next few days, I tried to act normally while planning my next move. I researched Dr. Thorne's background and found inconsistencies that should have been caught during his hiring process. His medical degree was from a university that had closed in 1987, but his transcripts were dated 1995. His previous employment references led to hospitals that had either been demolished or had no record of him working there. But every time I tried to dig deeper, I hit walls. Computer systems crashed, files disappeared, and the people I tried to contact either couldn't be reached or claimed to have no knowledge of what I was asking about. Meanwhile, Dr. Thorne continued his work. I watched helplessly as more patients took unexpected turns for the worse, their families left to grieve while something inhuman wore their doctor's face and fed on their loved ones' souls. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Jenny Morrison, a 23-year-old woman who'd been admitted for a routine appendectomy, developed complications that shouldn't have been possible. Her family was devastated, unable to understand how a simple surgery had gone so wrong. I found Dr. Thorne in the break room afterward, calmly eating a sandwich as if he hadn't just murdered someone young enough to be his daughter. She was supposed to go home tomorrow, I said. He looked up at me with those two deep eyes. Complications arise, it's unfortunate but not uncommon. She was 23 years old. Age is irrelevant, Sarah. A soul is a soul. The casual way he said it broke something inside me. I lunged at him, my hands going for his throat, but he caught my wrists effortlessly. His grip was cold and impossibly strong. I understand your anger, he said calmly, but this outburst is unproductive. You're drawing attention. I looked around and realized other staff members were staring at us. To them, it probably looked like I was having a breakdown, attacking a colleague without provocation. Let me go, I whispered. Will you behave yourself? I nodded and he released me. I stumbled backward, my wrists aching where he'd gripped them. Perhaps you should go home early today, Dr. Thorne suggested, his voice full of false concern. You seem upset about Miss Morrison's case. It's understandable. Losing young patients is always difficult. The other staff members murmured their agreement, looking at me with pity. I realized how I must appear to them, a nurse who'd been working too many night shifts, becoming emotionally unstable, unable to cope with the realities of hospital work. That night, I made a desperate decision. If I couldn't expose Dr. Thorne through official channels, I would have to stop him myself. I researched everything I could find about supernatural entities that fed on human souls, looking for weaknesses, methods of banishment or destruction. What I found wasn't encouraging. Most sources agreed that such creatures were ancient and powerful, nearly impossible to kill by conventional means. But there were references to binding rituals, ways to trap them or force them to leave. I spent my savings on supplies, salt, iron filings, various herbs and symbols recommended by multiple sources. I felt ridiculous carrying a bag full of what looked like ingredients for a medieval potion, but I was out of options. My plan was simple: confront Dr. Thorne in a location where I could control the environment, use the binding ritual to trap him, then find a way to destroy him. It was dangerous and probably suicidal, but I couldn't stand by and watch him kill more innocent people. I chose the old chapel in the hospital's basement. It hadn't been used for services in years, but it was still consecrated ground, which several sources claimed would weaken supernatural entities. I spent hours preparing the space, drawing protective circles with salt and iron filings, placing symbols I hoped would hold him. Then I waited. Dr. Thorne arrived at midnight, as if he'd been expecting my invitation. He stood in the doorway of the chapel, studying my preparations with what looked like amusement. Interesting decor, Sarah, very medieval. Don't come any closer, I warned, holding up a cross I'd taken from the chapel's altar. He laughed and the sound echoed strangely in the small space. You've been reading too many old books. Most of what humans believe about my kind is fiction, but not all of it. No, he admitted, stepping into the room. Not all of it, I watched in horror as he walked straight through my protective circles without any apparent effect. The salt and iron filings scattered under his feet like ordinary dust. The binding ritual requires more than symbols and superstition, he explained conversationally. It requires power, knowledge, sacrifice. You have none of those things. He was right, and we both knew it, but I wasn't going to give up. Maybe I can't stop you, I said, but I can make sure people know what you are. I pulled out my phone, which I'd set to live stream to social media. Everyone watching this, my name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a nurse at St. Mary's General Hospital. The man standing in front of me is Dr. Marcus Thorne, and he's been murdering patients for years. Dr. Thorne tilted his head, studying me with something that might have been respect. You're braver than I gave you credit for. Tell them what you are, I demanded. Tell them how you've been feeding on souls. Even if I did, who would believe it? They'll think you're having a mental breakdown. A dedicated nurse, driven over the edge by the stress of her job, making wild accusations against a respected colleague. He was right again, but I pressed on. Dr. Marcus Thorne isn't human. He's some kind of parasite that feeds on dying people. He's been doing it for decades, maybe centuries, moving from hospital to hospital. Fascinating theory, Dr. Thorne said to the camera. Sarah, I think you need help. This kind of paranoid delusion is a serious concern. Even as he spoke, I could see my viewer count dropping. The few comments that appeared were expressions of concern for my mental health, suggestions that someone call the police or the hospital administration. Show them, I pleaded, show them what you really are. Dr. Thorne considered this for a moment, then shrugged. Why not? The change began slowly. His features started to blur and shift, like a photograph being altered in real time. His skin grew pale and waxy, his eyes deepened until they became pools of absolute darkness. When he smiled, his mouth stretched too wide, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. But on my phone's screen, he looked completely normal. The camera sees only what I allow it to see, he explained, his voice now carrying those impossible harmonics. Technology is just another tool to be manipulated. I looked at the comments on my live stream. Viewers were asking why I was talking to empty air, wondering if this was some kind of performance art or if I was genuinely having a psychotic episode. Dr. Thorne moved closer, and I could feel the temperature dropping around him. You've failed, Sarah. No one will believe you, no one will help you, and now you know too much to be allowed to continue. Wait, I said desperately. If you're going to kill me anyway, at least answer one question. Why hospitals? Why not just hunt people on the streets? He paused, seeming genuinely interested in the question. Hospitals are perfect feeding grounds. People expect death here, so extra casualties go unnoticed. The pain and fear are already present, making the souls easier to extract. And there's something poetic about it, don't you think? A place dedicated to healing, corrupted into a hunting ground. How many people have you killed? I don't kill, Sarah. I harvest, and I've been doing it for over 400 years. Thousands of souls have nourished me, allowed me to continue my work. Your work, you mean murder. I mean mercy. Do you know what it's like to die slowly in agony while your family watches helplessly? I end that suffering. Yes, I take their essence, but I give them peace in return. That's not your choice to make, isn't it? I'm stronger, more evolved. Humans are cattle, Sarah. You live brief, meaningless lives, then die and rot in the ground. I give your deaths purpose. He was close enough now that I could see my reflection in his impossible eyes. But you're different. You've shown initiative, intelligence, courage. I could make you like me, give you the power to transcend your human limitations. Never, think about it, no more watching helplessly as patients suffer. No more being bound by human morality and weakness. You could help people truly end their pain permanently. As he spoke, I felt something creeping into my mind, not the violent intrusion from before, but a subtle influence, making his words seem reasonable. I found myself considering his offer, imagining the power to end suffering with a touch. Then I remembered Jenny Morrison's face, the confusion and terror in her eyes as she died. I thought about all the families who'd lost loved ones to this creature's hunger, all the souls he'd consumed to feed his own existence. No, I said firmly, I won't become a monster. Dr. Thorne's expression darkened. Then you'll die as a human, briefly and meaninglessly. He reached for me, and I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the livestream phone and smashed it against the stone altar, hoping to at least leave some evidence of what had happened. But instead of shattering, the phone began to emit a high-pitched whine. The screen flickered, showing impossible images, glimpses of Dr. Thorne's true form, the souls trapped within him, the centuries of death he'd caused. Dr. Thorne stumbled backward, his hands pressed to his temples. What did you do? I didn't know, but whatever was happening, it was hurting him. The whining grew louder, and the chapel's stained glass windows began to vibrate. On the phone's cracked screen, I could see faces, dozens of them, all the people Dr. Thorne had killed, their souls somehow being broadcast through the device. Stop it, he gasped, his form flickering between human and monster. But I couldn't stop it even if I wanted to. The phone had taken on a life of its own, and the signal was strengthening. I could hear voices now, the cries of Dr. Thorne's victims, speaking through the device. He killed us, they whispered in unison. He stole our lives, our souls. Don't let him escape. Dr. Thorne was writhing on the floor now, his carefully maintained human appearance dissolving completely. What lay before me was something ancient and terrible, a writhing mass of shadow and hunger that had been masquerading as a man for centuries. The souls, I realized, they're still conscious inside you. They've been aware all this time, trapped, the voices confirmed, imprisoned, but the connection grows weak, we can break free. The creature that had been Dr. Thorne let out a sound like breaking glass mixed with a dying scream. Streams of silver mist began pouring from its form, the souls of its victims finally finding release. "Help us," they pleaded. "Help us find peace." I reached for the phone, and the moment my fingers touched it, I was connected to them all. Hundreds of souls trapped for decades or centuries, crying out for freedom. I could feel their pain, their fear, but also their hope. "Go," I whispered. "You're free now." The silver streams swirled around the chapel like a miniature tornado, then began to fade, the souls finally able to move on to whatever came next. As they disappeared, the creature on the floor grew smaller, weaker, until nothing remained but a pile of old clothes and the smell of decay. I sat in the chapel for a long time after that, holding the broken phone and trying to process what had happened. The live stream had ended when the device shattered, but somehow it had also broadcast the truth about Dr. Thorne to anyone who'd been watching. When the hospital security finally found me, I was catatonic with shock. They said I'd been missing for 3 days, though it felt like minutes to me. Dr. Thorne was listed as having failed to show up for his shifts, and when they investigated his apartment, they found it empty, as if no one had ever lived there. His employment records had vanished from the hospital's system. His medical license had no corresponding entry in the state database. It was as if Dr. Marcus Thorne had never existed at all. The official story was that I'd suffered a nervous breakdown, brought on by overwork and stress. I was given medical leave and strongly encouraged to seek psychiatric help. The few people who'd seen my livestream were told it had been a desperate cry for help, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But I know the truth, and sometimes, late at night, I still get messages on my phone from unknown numbers. They're always the same: "Thank you for setting us free." I never returned to nursing. I couldn't bring myself to work in a hospital again, knowing what might be lurking in the corridors, wearing a friendly face and hunting among the sick and dying. Instead, I started researching other cases, looking for patterns that might indicate similar creatures operating in medical facilities around the world. What I've found keeps me awake at night. Dr. Thorne wasn't unique. There are others out there, ancient things that have learned to hide among us, feeding on human suffering while masquerading as healers. I've tried to warn people, but who believes stories like mine? I'm just another conspiracy theorist, another person who sees monsters where others see only dedicated medical professionals. But I keep watching, keep documenting, keep hoping that someday I'll find a way to expose them all. Because somewhere out there, in hospitals and clinics around the world, things that should not exist are wearing white coats and stethoscopes, and the people who trust them with their lives have no idea how much danger they're really in. The worst part is knowing that Dr. Thorne was probably right about one thing. Most people would rather believe in human evil than supernatural horror. It's easier to accept that a doctor might be incompetent or negligent than to consider that he might not be human at all. So the monsters continue their work, hidden in plain sight, and I continue mine, knowing that I'm probably the only one who truly understands what we're up against. Sometimes I wonder if I should have accepted Dr. Thorne's offer, become something more than human so I could fight these creatures on equal terms. But then I remember the faces of his victims, the terror in their eyes as their souls were torn away, and I know I made the right choice. Even if it means I'll spend the rest of my life as the only one who knows the truth, watching helplessly as the monsters wearing masks of mercy continue to feed.